In the first 6 generations, Bulbasaur learns Leech Seed at level 7. In Pokemon Sun and Moon, Bulbasaur learns Vine Whip at level 7 instead, but in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, they changed it back to Leech Seed at level 7. In Pokemon Black and White, Ivysaur cannot be traded on the GTS if it has its original English name. This is because of very strict nickname censors on Pokemon Black and White that sees the word Ivysaur as offensive. Venusaur is Ken Sugimori's least favorite Pokemon to draw due to how complex the design is. Niue is an island nation located in the Pacific Ocean. They once released a commemorative $1 coin with Charmander on it. Charmeleon and Quilava have the same exact stat total and distribution. In fact, the same can be said about the entire Charmeleon and Quilava line, but we'll only count this as just a fact for Charmeleon. In Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Charizard is unable to learn Metal Claw and False Swipe via TM, despite Charmander learning Metal Claw via Level Up and being able to learn False Swipe via a TM. In the original Pokemon Adventures manga, Green, or Blue if you go by the Japanese names, stole her Squirtle from Professor Oak and named it Blasty. Wartortle has these white ears that match its tail, however in early promotional art for the Pokemon anime, it shows Wartortle with ears that are the same color as its face. While Squirtle is categorized as the tiny turtle Pokemon, and Wartortle is categorized as the turtle Pokemon, Blastoise is categorized as the shellfish Pokemon, while something like the giant turtle would make a lot more sense. It gets even weirder when you learn that Kabuto and Kabutops are also the shellfish Pokemon, suggesting there could be some relation between Blastoise and these ancient fossil Pokemon. Also, just check out this panel of Blastoise from the manga, I just thought it looked funny. Caterpie was the first Pokemon ever caught in the Pokemon anime, as well as the first Pokemon ever seen evolve in the anime. Similar to Caterpie, Metapod was the first Pokemon seen evolve in a Pokemon movie. Butterfree is a Bug-type Pokemon, but couldn't learn any Bug-type moves until the 3rd generation. This is an early design for Weedle that was shown on Game Freak's website many years ago. Weedle is also the only Pokemon that can't learn any normal-type moves whatsoever, as the most moves it can learn in the mainline Pokemon games is just 3, being Poison Sting, String Shot, and Bug Bite. In Kakuna's Pokemon Red and Blue sprite, it appears to have arms which could be Beedrill breaking out of the shell. No other sprite from later Pokemon games show these arms on Kakuna, but in an early art piece of Kakuna, you could see what looked like these arms. Beedrill's English name was originally spelled with just one L. Its Japanese name is also just translated to Spear. Pidgey has the shortest cry out of any Pokemon, being just 0.181 seconds long. Some Pokedex entries say that Pidgeotto will fiercely peck at any intruder, however Pidgeotto cannot learn the move Peck. In Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, when you rebattle the gym leaders, the first gym leader, Falconer, will have a Pidgeot as his highest level Pokemon, while Blue, the last gym leader in Kanto, will also have a Pidgeot as his highest level Pokemon. Rattata is technically a starter Pokemon, sort of, as in the first Pokemon Rumble game for the Wii, the first Pokemon you ever get to use is a Rattata. In Pokemon Ultra Moon, during the cutscene before you fight the Totem Alolan Raticate, Gumshoe's cry will play instead. Spearow is thought to be based off of a sparrow, but it's actually based off a shrike, which are small birds that can kill larger prey. That red part on Spearow's head is called a coxcomb. It's also called that on chickens too, in case you were wondering. Ekans, spelled backwards, is snake. Okay, that one's really obvious, so let's not count it. But Ekans was originally going to be featured in Pokemon Snap for the Nintendo 64, as shown from some early screenshots, but was just cut for no real reason. The pattern that you see on Arbok's chest is a bit different throughout the first couple of generations. This is most clearly seen between Arbok's Pokemon Emerald sprite and its Fire Red and Leaf Green sprite. Pikachu is the only Pokemon that can be caught in all 3 Pokemon Pinball games, being the original Pokemon Pinball for the Game Boy, Pokemon Pinball Ruby and Sapphire for the Game Boy Advance, and even Pokemon Pinball Mini for the Pokemon Mini, which we made a full video on last year if you want to go check out. Also, Game Freak / Nintendo / Pokemon Company, give us another Pokemon Pinball game, please. It's been 20 years. In Pokemon Fire Red and Pokemon Sun, Raichu's Pokedex entry states how its electricity can knock out an Indian elephant. In Pokemon Legends Arceus, this was changed to say a Copperjaw instead of an Indian elephant. Alolan Sandshrew has the lowest special attack out of any Pokemon tied with Shuckle, Feebas, and Bonsly, with only 10 special attack. In the beta for Pokemon Red and Blue, Sandslash was named Sandstorm. Nidoran male and Nidoran female were the first Pokemon to feature a gender difference. However, Nidoran female is still considered to be a different Pokemon from Nidoran male, as they each have different Pokedex entries, unlike newer Pokemon with gender differences like Meowstic. Nidorina and Nidoqueen are the only two Pokemon that can't breed, even though their pre-evolution, Nidoran female, can breed. In the original Japanese Red and Green games, Nidoqueen is mistakenly listed as 6 kilograms instead of 60 kilograms. At this time, weight wasn't factored into any Pokemon attacks or anything like that, so it didn't really have an impact on the game. If Nidoran male is bred with a Ditto, the eggs that come with it can be a Nidoran male or a Nidoran female. Nidorina was one of the few Pokemon that originate from when Game Freak pitched Pokemon to Nintendo in 1990. Pokemon was originally called Capsule Monsters then, and I have a full video explaining Game Freak's history with Pokemon linked in the description if you want to check that out after watching this video. In Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team and Blue Rescue Team, one of the lines Nidoking says in battle is, "I'm the male among males." I don't know what that means. Clefairy's Japanese name is Pee-Pee. Clefable has been categorized as the fairy Pokemon well before fairy type was even a type in Pokemon. Vulpix is the only Pokemon with a base stat total of exactly 299. Ninetales' name is often misspelled as Ninetales with an I at the end there. This is seen in some pre-release material for Pokemon as well, and even in Pokemon TCG for the Game Boy Color. Jigglypuff can learn Delibirg's signature move Present by breeding with a Marill or with an event Pikachu that had the move Present from a 2009 event. The white patch on Wigglytuff's belly didn't always extend past its mouth, as you can see in its early Generation 1 and 2 sprites. Despite not having any eyes, Zubat can still learn Mean Look. In earlier Pokemon games, especially the spin-offs, Golbat is depicted with a very large tongue. Golbat's large tongue hasn't been depicted in a Pokemon game in about 15 years, with the last game to show its large tongue being Pokemon Battle Revolution. In Generation 2, Bill's grandfather asked the player to bring him a round, green Pokemon with leaves on its head. He's referring to Oddish, which is blue, not green. Gloom is based off Rafflesia plants and can have the ability Chlorophyll despite the plant that it's based off of not containing any chlorophyll. Vileplume's Pokemon Red and Blue Dex entries state how its head is so heavy that it's hard to hold up, which can be why it's holding its own head up with one of its arms in its original Red and Blue sprite. In Generation 1, Poison-type moves were super effective against Bug-type Pokemon, making Paras and Parasect the only Pokemon to have 4 times weaknesses to 3 different types in Bug, Fire, and Flying. Parasect's Pokedex entry in Pokemon Stadium says how the spores on its back are sometimes used as medicine in China. Venonat appears in the regional dex for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and the last time Venonat was included in the regional dex for a non-remake Pokemon game was in Pokemon Crystal. Early artwork for Venomoth features yellow spots on the back of its wings. In the Pokeathlon, Diglett is unable to jump, and in the hurdle hash, it digs under the hurdles instead of jumping over them like other Pokemon do. In any of these minigames that require Diglett to jump, Diglett just doesn't jump. Dugtrio is the fastest ground-type Pokemon with a base speed stat of 120. Meowth is the only Pokemon to currently have regional forms in 2 different regions. Persian runs the bank in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. Psyduck is Junichi Masuda's favorite Pokemon, and it was even considered to be the counterpart for Pikachu when releasing the Let's Go games in 2018, but was ultimately not chosen because of Psyduck's similarity in color to Pikachu. Golduck is the same height as Charizard, standing at 5 foot 7 inches tall. If you visit the Game Freak office in Hiya City, Shigeki Morimoto states how he designed Mankey according to his boss's instructions. According to Pocket Monsters the Animation, which is a book that follows the same events as the anime, Primeape was the reason why Pokeballs were first developed. Growlithe, as well as Hisuian Growlithe, are unable to learn the move Growl. Arcanine is categorized as the legendary Pokemon, although it is not a legendary Pokemon. The creator of Pokemon, Satoshi Tajiri, has said that Poliwag is his favorite Pokemon. Prior to Pokemon Emerald, Poliwhirl's hands were depicted as wearing gloves, and from Emerald version onward, they were changed to be mittens without each finger being clearly separated. Sometimes Poliwrath is shown having 3 fingers, and other times it's shown having 4 fingers. In Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX, Abra will always drop a max Ether when defeated. Kadabra can breed with Lopunny to learn the move Magic Coat in Sword and Shield. In Pokemon Red and Blue, if your Pokemon's at low health and your opponent sends out an Alakazam, it will play Ghastly's Cry instead. Before Pokemon Red and Blue released in English, Machop was known as karate, which is a play on karate. In the official Pokemon handbook, it states how Machoke is sometimes too busy looking at itself in its mirror to train, while its Pokemon Stadium Dex entry says although it's incredibly strong, it's always modest, which contradicts what it says in the handbook. Machamp can be seen in Ed Sheeran's music video for Celestial. Bellsprout can learn Leech Life through breeding, but in Pokemon Sun and Moon, as well as Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, it cannot learn Leech Life via TM. In Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Victreebel says how it can melt anything with the fluid in its mouth. Victreebel's name is also so long that it had to be spelled with just one L so it fit. Tentacruel's Pokemon Ultra Moon Dex entry says how it's 99% water, and the remaining 1% is the organ that it uses to make poison. Tentacruel apparently has 80 tentacles according to some of its Dex entries. Geodude's evolutionary line is the only 3-stage evolutionary line to all have regional forms. Graveler's Pokemon Red and Blue sprite shows only 4 limbs. This was fixed in Yellow version to show Graveler's legs. In Red, Blue, and Yellow version, Golem is the only Pokemon that can never be seen without trading, as no NPCs have one. Ponyta's Fire Red Dex entry states how it can jump over the Eiffel Tower. Galarian Rapidash is categorized as the unique horn Pokemon, which sounds a lot like unicorn. Slowpoke has appeared many times in the anime, but has never been seen going for an attack. Slowbro's Dex entry states how if the shelter on its tail is removed, it will revert back into a Slowpoke, which is one of the few instances of a Pokemon devolving. Magnemite was made by Ken Sugimori after Satoshi Tajiri suggested that they make a Pokemon based off of a magnet. Magneton is often seen floating in the air, despite not having access to the ability to levitate. Farfetch was originally planned to have an evolution back in Pokemon Gold and Silver, but it was scrapped. Farfetch finally received an evolution in Generation 8 with Surfetched, although it was unrelated to its old proposed evolution. Doduo can run at about 60 miles per hour, while Dodrio can run at 40 miles per hour, even though Dodrio has a higher base speed stat than Doduo. Seal is the only non-Ice type Pokemon with the Ice Body ability. In the Pokemon Adventures manga, Lorelei tried to use Dugong's Ice Beam to bury Yellow and Bill alive. Grimer was apparently formed by sludge that was transformed when exposed to X-rays from the moon. Muck has the shortest name out of any Pokemon, tied with Mew. In Pokemon Snap, Shelder can be seen floating. This is the only time a Shelder is ever seen floating. Cloyster is tied with Mega Slowbro for having the highest defense stat for a water-type Pokemon. Ghastly and its evolutions are the only ghost and poison-type Pokemon. Haunter and Ghastly are also the same weight. Gengar is Ken Sugimori's favorite Pokemon to draw because it's the easiest Pokemon to draw. Onix is the heaviest and tallest unevolved Pokemon. Drowsy is based off of a Japanese myth named Baku, which eats the bad dreams of people. In Hypno's Pokemon Red and Blue Dex entry, it states how it uses PSI moves, or Psi with an I, such as Hypnosis or Confusion. This is either a mistake and they meant Psychic, or it could suggest that Psychic moves were originally planned to be abbreviated as Psi moves. Many Dex entries say how Krabby's pincers often break off, but grow back quickly. Kingler's Gigantamax form is the only Pokemon that can use the G-Max move, G-Max Foam Burst. Voltorb has the lowest attack stat out of all Electric-type Pokemon. It is possible to receive an Electrode at only level 3 in Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. If you catch a level 3 Pikachu in the Viridian Forest, then trade it with this NPC in Cinnabar Island for an Electrode, you will receive a level 3 Electrode. Voltorb normally doesn't evolve until level 30 though, so this is a pretty unique Pokemon to have. Execute is an egg Pokemon consisting of 6 eggs, which hatched from 1 egg, which can also lay eggs themselves. That's a lot of eggs. Executor is Tsunekazu Ishihara's favorite Pokemon. He's the current president of the Pokemon Company, and even used an Executor while debugging Pokemon Red and Green. Cubone wears the skull of its dead mother. However, if you breed a Cubone, it will still hatch with a skull on its head, even though its mother would still be alive. Alolan Marowak is the only dual-type Pokemon that shares no types with its pre-evolution. Hitmonlee has had 4 different signature moves in High Jump Kick, Rolling Kick, and Mega Kick. None of these 4 moves are signature to Hitmonlee anymore, as so many Pokemon get them now. Hitmonchan is number 107 in the Pokedex, and Little Mac, coincidentally, also weighs 107 pounds. In the game Paperboy for the Nintendo 64, Lickitung is listed in the credits as a special thanks. I have no idea why. Coughing was originally planned to be named Nye after all the pollution in New York City, and Wheezing was originally planned to be La after all the pollution in Los Angeles. Several Pokedex entries state how Rhyhorn has powerful tackles, despite Rhyhorn being unable to learn Tackle until Generation 8. Rhydon was the first Pokemon created by Game Freak, and is featured in a lot of early Capsule Monsters artwork even. In Generation 2, there was an event that ran in August of 2002 for an event Chansey with the move Sweet Scent. This event was even done in the United States, and events outside of Japan were very rare at this time for Generation 2. It's also one of the only ways to get Sweet Scent on a Chansey legitimately. Tangela was called Medusa in the Red and Blue beta, deriving from Medusa. There are many instances where it's implied that male Kangaskhans exist, however you can only ever obtain a female Kangaskhan in-game. Horsea has one fin on its back, except for its original Red and Blue artwork where it can be seen with 2 fins. Seadra does not have the Swift Swim ability, although Horsea, its pre-evolution, and Kingdra, its evolution, do. Goldeen can learn Waterfall in Generation 1, before it was an HM, and before it was a move that many Pokemon could even learn. Due to a programming error in Pokemon Gold and Silver, Seaking has Tail Whip as one of its starting moves. Staryu is programmed to have an egg move in Gold and Silver, but its gender is unknown and eggs are unobtainable from a Staryu. Starmie can learn Attract in Generation 2. It will always fail though, because much like its pre-evolution Staryu, Starmie has a gender of unknown. Mr. Mime's sprite had 3 fingers up until Fire and Leaf Green, where it now has 4 fingers. Scyther has a base stat total of 500, which is the same as its evolution, Scizor. This is the only example of a pre-evolved Pokemon having the same stat total as its evolution. Jynx is one of the few Pokemon that doesn't have a footprint, but it can also learn Mega Kick. Electabuzz's original artwork shows it with 4 fingers. In the anime and later artwork it has 5 fingers, but this gets even better. In Pokemon Stadium and Stadium 2, Electabuzz has 6 fingers. Magmar was born inside of a volcano. Pinsir hates the cold so much that at night it buries itself in foliage from the forest for warmth. There is a dex entry for Cantonian Tauros in Scarlet and Violet, despite Cantonian Tauros being unobtainable at launch. This is especially weird when you consider that Quagsire, a Pokemon that is obtainable in Scarlet and Violet through an NPC trade, does not have a dex entry. Magikarp is the only Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet that can't use Terra Blast. Now Ditto can't technically learn Terra Blast on its own, but it can transform and then go for Terra Blast. Gyarados is tied with Pelipper as the most common Pokemon used by a gym leader, since 7 different gym leaders have a Gyarados. In Pokemon X and Y, if you surf and take a picture at the Azure Bay, you will be riding on a Lapras even if you don't have a Lapras in your party. Ditto and Manaphy are the only Pokemon that can breed, but can't be obtained through a traditional egg. Eevee is the only Pokemon that isn't a water type that can evolve with a water stone. In Pokemon Yellow, there is a bug where Vaporeon learns Haze and Mist at level 42. Since a Pokemon couldn't learn 2 moves at the same time via level up in Generation 1, Vaporeon could only learn Mist at level 42 unless it leveled up to 42 while in the daycare, as the daycare automatically teaches new moves when you level up there. In Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Jolteon talks a lot about negative ions because it turns them into electricity. Flareon is the only Eeveelution with a type advantage against more than one other Eeveelution, since Leafeon and Glaceon are both weak to fire. The Porygon line is the only evolutionary line that evolves twice via trade with different held items both times. Ammonite can learn the move Tickle as an egg move, and being tickled by an Ammonite sounds terrifying. Omastar's dex entry says how it's thought that it became extinct because its spiral shell grew to be too large. Kabuto's beta name was which could be a reference to Atlantis. And seeing how Kabutops's beta name was Atlantis, it makes even more sense now. Aerodactyl isn't obtainable in Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, but it does appear in Pokemon Pinball Ruby and Sapphire. In Gold and Silver, Snorlax is programmed to have Charm as an egg move, but no Pokemon in Snorlax's egg move learns Charm. Articuno's Japanese name translates to just Freezer. Zapdos is the fixed legendary Pokemon that can be obtained with the fewest badges, since you only need the Boulder badge and then the Soul badge to obtain one in Red and Blue. This does require you to trade over a Pokemon with HM moves though. A trainer on Cinnabar Island says that Blaine became a Fire-type trainer after seeing a Moltres. Dratini was originally designed because Game Freak wanted to add more cute Pokemon to Red and Green. Dragonair is also the name of a former airline that was based out of Hong Kong. In Pokemon Yellow version, Dragonite's catch rate was changed from 45 down to 9 despite being unable to catch a Dragonite in Yellow version. Mewtwo was the very first Pokemon shown in the English anime since it appears at the very start of the intro. The Pokemon Mew was created just 2 weeks before Pokemon Red and Green were finished with development and released in Japan, and were snuck in very late in development, which is why you can only obtain it through a glitch or a very limited time event. And that's it, all original 151 Pokemon, so bye.